What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. In this conversation, I will be discussing with you a few evolutionary points of boxing from 1920s to 1930s. Although boxing has never changed, but there have been some differences according to the eras in which certain fighters have fought. What do I mean by that? I chose a few fighters because I believe they were very good benchmarks for the discussion that I would choose to have based on the conversation that is so important and necessary to understand. Black Bill would be one of the names that I'm going to be mentioning. His name was Eladio Valdez. He was managed, by the way, by Luis Gutierrez, who was a flyweight Cuban contender who would never get a title shot. You see, Black Bill was also idolized by many other Cuban fighters after him. Kid Chocolate and Kid Gavilan, among others. But he was a dynamic boxer, quick with his hands and quick with his feet. But outside the ring, he carried himself with dignity and honor and respect. You can find Eladio Valdez with a three-piece suit, fedora hat, and wing-tipped shoes. The wing-tipped shoes would be shinier than a baby's backside, as they say. And he would walk with a cane, didn't need one. It was for the style and fashion of his time. He would have a gold tooth, as many that would symbolize wealth and I'm doing okay, so to speak. Jack Johnson would have one, and many others. You could find Eladio Valdez, yes, in Stillman's gym, yes, in Gleason's gym. But as I often mentioned, you would find him, particularly in Grubb's gym. It was located on 116th Street in Harlem, New York. And there you would find past fighters such as George Godfrey, the Leaperville Shadow, Harry Wells, the Brown Panther, Kid Norfolk. Yes, later on you would find Walker Smith, who was Ray Robinson, and Louis Valentine, nicknamed Spider, Danny Cox, who was the heavyweight during that time. But you would also find many other great black fighters, such as Cesar Charles walking through the gymnasium. You would find Holman Williams, Charlie Green, Sandy Blackwood, Mega Johnson, many, many of them. But speaking of Black Bill, he would die penniless, blind in both eyes. The quintessential issues that fighters would have who did not manage their money correctly. Now, in 1929, Black Bill would be involved with a fighter by the name of Valdez, who was ranked number 2. Behind ranked number 1, Frankie Gennaro. Ranked number 6, you had Speedy Dado, and ranked number 7, Emil Plander. Ranked number 8 was Midget Wargas, and number 9 was Frankie Ballinger. Now, at the end of Black Bill's career, he would have a record of 165 total bouts, 125 wins, 22 knockouts, and 24 losses. He would have 13 draws. Between September 30th, 1925, July 14th, 1930, he would have an amazing 6-bout series with William Willie D. Davis. He was from Wales, and he died July 19th, 1968. He stood 5'4", weighed 110 to 121 pounds between August 19th, 1924 and December 1st, 1933. He would be in the ring with Frankie Mason and Corporal Izzy Swartz, Willie LaMotta, and Black Bill, Phil Goldstein, Newsboy Brown, and Midget Wargas. Now, Johnny McCoy and Albert Wargas, and Elmer Spider Plander, Babe Herman, and Allentown Johnny Leonard. Johnny Leonard was a very good fighter. So was Bobby Garcia. 6-bout series with Corporate Izzy Swartz between June 27th, 1925 and November 28th, 1928. He was born October 23rd, 1900, Manhattan, New York. He would die July 1988 in Manhattan as well. I had the pleasure of meeting Corporal Izzy Schwartz. He stood 5 foot 1 inches, weighed 108 and a half pounds to 118 and a quarter pounds. Phil Bernstein was a very good fighter. Now, Schwartz would win a flyweight championship title from Bernstein, New York SAC, December 16, 1927. He would lose May 23, 1928 in Brooklyn, New York, against Bushy Graham for the NBA World Bantamweight Championship title. Now, Bushy Graham would fight in the AEF, America's Expeditionary Forces, against another black fighter, and his name was Leo Patterson. And that would be some fight. Bobby Green, Marty Gold, and Eugene Hart, with just a few names on those agendas. Now, Major Wargas, his name was Joseph Robert Wargas. He was born July 18, 1910, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He died October 19, 1955, in Philadelphia as well. Stood 5 foot 3 and a half inches, weighed 107 to 145 pounds, and he was managed by Chris Dundee. He had a record of 136 wins, 35 losses, 16 draws, and 15 knockouts. He would have 19 no-decision contests and 1 no contest. Willie Davis, Jackie Brown, Archie Bell, Juan Zarita, Lou Salica, Speedy Dado, Small Montana, Marty Gold, Johnny McCoy, and Newsboy Brown, which is a handful of fighters that he would be in a ring with, and he really showed himself to be a well-quality fighter. He would also face Black Bill, Eladio Valdez, March 21st, 1930, in New York's Madison Square Garden. Would come up with a 15-round victory for the flyweight championship title for the New York SAC version of that. Now, Frankie Gennaro, 15-round draw, NBA flyweight championship crown. The New York SAC was a part of that as well. Why am I saying all this? Black Bill did not get his title shot. He had to take on a fighter who was not in his ranking, below his ranking, because he wasn't old enough. You see, the New York SAC would not grant a 19-year-old for the title. Couldn't fight more than 6 rounds. And the New York SAC was on the line, not the NBA, for that fight. I often ask myself a question, why? Now, November 5th, he would defeat Small Montana, Los Angeles, California. He would lose in 10 rounds. He was defeated by Small Montana with a very good right hook and a straight left hand combination. November 27th, he would lose 10 rounds to Henry Armstrong, Oakland, California, 5 times. Juan Zarita. Midget Wargas was a good fighter. And yes, he did beat Black Bill. He defeated him. But the way it was arranged, I believe Black Bill didn't get the best of chances that he should have received. Not for the quality of a fighter that he was. And there was many fighters, Pete Saramento and many of them, that didn't get the fair opportunities that they so rightly deserved. There were more contenders than challengers for titles. And when you look at their records, it would show otherwise. So I just wanted to recognize Eladio Valdez, Black Bill, great Cuban fighter. And he just unfortunately didn't get the shot I believe he should have gotten. phenomenal fighter, was black belt. Now, Kid Chocolate, the Cuban bonbon, was born January 6, 1910, in Havana, Cuba. He died August 8, 1988. And I had the pleasure of meeting Kid Chocolate. He had a record of 152 total bouts, 136 wins, 51 knockouts, and 10 losses. He had 6 draws and over 100 amateur fights that, on record, he was credited for winning. He stood 5 foot 6 inches, weighed 120 to 132 pounds, and he was in the Boxing Hall of Fame in 1959. International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1994. Now, he was sparred with such greats as Benny Leonard and Jack Johnson. October 22nd, 1927 to December 18th, 1938 would be the years that he would engage in the pugilism of fisticuffs. He was in the ring with fighters such as Eddie Shea and Al Swinger, Luz Feldman and Chick Suggs, Bushy Graham and Eddie O'Dowd, Benny Bass and Tommy Watson, Pete Nebo, Fidel Barber, Jackie Kidberg and Johnny Farr, Steve Smith, Tommy Paul, Petey Hayes and Simon Chavez, Tony Canzonari and Buster Brown, Lou Feldman and Frankie Clay. He had 24 bouts in 1937. He would win the Cuban Combo Amateur Championship. 1924, September 1922, the La Noche Amateur Championships. They have him credited for 100 bouts with 86 knockouts, no losses, as an amateur. November 8, 1928, would take on a fighter by the name of Pinky Silverberg. May 22nd, 1929, Bronx, New York's 10-round win over Fidel Barber. Now, Fidel Barber was an amateur star. He would be involved in the Olympic Games. And as an amateur, Fidel Barber would be in the ring with Peter Cerrone. Peter Cerrone would wind up becoming a featherweight champion of the world. He would lose his title in 1937 to the famous Henry Armstrong in 6 rounds in New York's Madison Square Garden. What was ironic about that fight was that Henry Armstrong would become the 3rd black fighter to win a title in a famous Madison Square Garden. He was the first black American featherweight champion at that time. Now, Fidel Barber, who was he? He was born September 29th, 1905 in New York. He died October 3rd, 1981, Los Angeles, California. He stood 5 foot 3 inches, weighed 112 to 124 pounds. He was managed by George Blake. Now, who was George Blake? George Blake was the referee who would take 5 rounds away from Henry Armstrong. Henry Armstrong was trying to get the NBA welterweight championship title from Seferino Garcia. They had to fight in California because the New York SAC was not recognized a 10-round bout. And Seferino Garcia's management team did not want Henry Armstrong to fight for the New York SAC. But the thing is, they knew that Henry Armstrong would defeat Seferino Garcia. They knew that because he defeated him in 1938. This is in 1940. So George Blake would be that referee. He was paid off by the mob. And when the fight was over, he would raise the hand of Garcia and he would just run out of the arena. He would be caught on a corner trying to catch a cab, and he would confess as to what really happened. Barber would win the flyweight championship crown, 1927. He would take on fighters such as Pedro Vila, Charles Bud Taylor, Elkie Clark, and Willie Lamarty. Santiago Zurita, Peter Cerrone, California Joe Lynch and Tommy Paul, Frankie Gennaro, Kid Chocolate, Earl Mastro, and Bushy Graham. Kid Francis, Claude Vanner, Ballerino, and Lester Wildcat Carter. Johnny Pena and Alberto Baby Aris Menzi, Al Citrino. Oh, what a fighter Fidel Barber was. I don't think he's given him enough credit for what he has done over the years. But he was a fantastic fighter, and he would be in the ring with Kid Chocolate. And what a fight that was. Now, Tony Canzonari, I have him ranked number 7. I'm sorry, no, number 9. Number 9. I have him ranked number 9 along with Benny Leonard and Johnny Dundee, the Scott Swab. Collectively. To me, he is such an underrated fighter in today's standards. A lot of people don't know who Tony Canzonari is. They rank him very low. And after studying Tony Canzonari in every conceivable way, his career, his record, watching all his fight films, studying his personal life, listening to the historians that I knew for many, many years, reading as many books as I could on Tony Canzonari and other books on other fighters that Tony Canzonari was a part of the discussion, I come to the conclusion that Tony Canzonari is greater than some of the big names that you mention when you talk boxing. And I have him ranked very highly on a historical level because of what he's done, the amount of titles that he captured. When he knocked out Al Singer in 1 round, 6 months after he would defeat Sammy Mandel. Canzonari his fight with Lou Ambers was fascinating. He put his World Lightweight Championship title on the line. He wanted to take on a junior welterweight champion. The Cuban Bomber, Kid Chocolate. And this fight took place November 20th, 1931. 15 rounds. December in New York's Madison Square Garden. And what got Tony Canzonari to this position? That he would face Andre Rotis, November 22nd, 1926 in Brooklyn, New York, the Broadway Arena, 12 rounds. He lost 1919 to Leo Patterson, who was the lightweight champion of the ABF. The AEF was the American Expeditionary Forces, and Bushy Graham would defeat, Leo Patterson would defeat Bushy Graham, but Bushy Graham would defeat New York's Madison Square Garden in 10 rounds. Charles Bud Taylor, March 26, 1927, in Chicago, 10 rounds, would have a draw for the NBA Bantamweight Championship title. I'm speaking of Tony Canzonari. June 24th, 1927, in Chicago, Illinois, he would lose 10 rounds for the NBA Bantamweight Championship rematch. He faced California Joe Lynch in 10 rounds. He would win against Eddie Anderson, Pete Saramento, Iowa Joe Rivers at the Broadway Arena. He scored first round knockout on October 27th, 1924. October 24th, 1927 against Johnny Dundee, New York's Madison Square Garden. He would win the World Featherweight Championship title in 15 rounds. Now, he would take on Charles Bud Taylor, and he would defeat him in 10 rounds in New York's Madison Square Garden, December 30th, 1927. He also faced Ignacio Fernandez in New York's Madison Square Garden. He would face Jackie Kidberg, Benny Bass, Billy Patrol the Fargo Express, and Eddie Kid Wolf, Johnny Farr, Sammy Fuller, Billy Patrol the Fargo Express was some fighter, by the way, Al Singer, Joe Click, Tommy Grogan, Phil McGraw, Andre Rotis, and Joey Senghor. We lose the Junior Welterweight Championship crown to Johnny Jadek. 10-round loss in Philadelphia. January 18th, 1932. Now, July 18th, 1932, he would lose 10 rounds to Johnny Jadek in a rematch, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. for the Junior Welterweight Championship crown. Now, he defeated Billy Patrol of Fargo Express November 4th, 1932, in defense of his World Lightweight Championship crown, New York's Madison Square Garden. I'll tell you, Tony Canzonari is one of the greatest fighters, in my opinion, of all times. And what he has accomplished during the course of his career, it's not going to be duplicated anytime soon. In fact, I don't think it will be. Because of the rules had changed and what was allowed. The fighters in his era, the fighters who fought each other multiple times, the management, what went on at the time of Tony Canzonari, he was just some fighter. And in my opinion, I have him ranked number 9 of all times. Now, one last thing on Tony Canzonari, and I'll end this video. After 2 losses to Chicago's Barney Ross, June 23rd and September 12th of 1933, he would lose the Junior Welterweight Championship crown. Tony Canzonari would then go on to defeat Albert Baby Arizmenzi, Pete Nebo, and Frankie Click. May 10th, 1935, September 3rd, 1936, Canzonari would win and lose the World Lightweight Championship crown to Lou Ambers in New York's Madison Square Garden. Now, Battling Ballerino was born February 18th, 1908 in Hartford, Connecticut. He died July 25th, 1977 in Hartford, Connecticut. Now, here's a man who stood 5 foot 6 inches and weighed 124 to 142 pounds. And he faced fighters such as Freddie Miller, Al Singer, Kid Chocolate and Bushy Graham, Coco Kid and Lou Mason, Charles Taylor and Andre Ratis, Lou Feldman, Billy Patrol, Fidel Barber, and Barney Ross, Earl Mastro, Louis Kid Kaplan, Panama Al Brown. September 23rd, 1929, he would win the World Featherweight Championship crown from Andre Ratis. Andre Ratis was the fighter that black belt, Eladio Valdez, should have been fighting for that flyweight championship title. Instead, Eladio Valdez had to face Midget Wargasm. Boxing has not changed over the years. But for the goodness of boxing, the payday has changed. There are more titles to be won now. But in my opinion, it takes the luster out of the game. You see, fighters were more hungrier at that time. They fought with a different purpose. There was a reason for them to be in the square circle. You had times where moments were rough. The Depression would hit in 1927. The rules would change. The Walker Law will be heavily in effect. And if you ask me, boxing has not been the same since the 1960s and 70s, and even in the 80s. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Thanks for listening.